Welcome back to our growing experiment. We're here with Amy and Dan from Restless Ravens. So do you guys want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
So I'm Amy and this is Dan. We live in Field and our homestead is called Restless Ravens Homestead. And we started it in 2018. We moved up here from like southwestern Ontario, and we weren't like farming or anything at the time, although like I grew up on a farm. He kind of grew up working on farms. We never really like set out to kind of be farmers. We just kind of set out to be like self-sufficient, and we wanted to live in the bush. We wanted to live up north. So we moved up here. We found our place kind of on a whim, and we just kind of went for it. And then we kind of slowly like evolved into like, you know, like hunting, growing your own food, that kind of thing, to like being more of like a farm. I think we were like a bit naive maybe in the beginning, thinking that like we weren't going to be a farm and try and be self-sufficient, because there's so much that comes with it. Like you can't just survive off of like hunting and growing your own food, like just your own vegetables or whatever. And I grew up on a farm, but the kind of farming that like I grew up with was like more commercial kind of farming, and especially in the area where we were was a lot of like commercial farming, and it kind of made me like hate farming a little bit. And I never wanted to, you know, like participate in it because I was kind of like against it, even though I understand why things are the way they are. I just wanted to do something that I felt was better and kind of more natural and more like connected to the earth. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We're doing, you know, farming, but we're doing it more like small scale and more natural. Like our animals get to be outside, and just that kind of thing. And I don't know, it feels better. And I feel like it gets a better end product, with like your animals, your meat, your food, like what you're putting into it is what you're going to get out of it. And I feel like we put a lot of love into everything. So we're getting a lot of love and positive energy and everything back from what we put into it. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds like a common trend we're finding with a lot of people that we're talking to is exactly that. You know, there's a desire to do things in a sort of a new way. And it's like you said, a little more in line with doing something more natural and getting that investment, like you're saying too, where, you know, you put love in and you get love out. So that's really cool. For when you guys first started and the kind of hunting you were doing, were you guys focusing on big game, or would you get some big game, some small game, do a bit of angling, or?
I started hunting, when was it? Probably about 10 to 15 years ago. And when I first started, I did white-tailed deer, southwestern Ontario. There's basically I was in the shotgun season down there when I first started out. And then as I moved up here, and I moved out west and lived out there prior to being here, and did a lot of bird hunting out there and got more into that. And then being up here, getting into, you know, trying to do a little bit of everything. Like we do small game, trapping, fishing. Like we back right onto a lake here. So we're really fortunate, and we have good fishing right where we are. So it's really nice that way. But trying to do a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah, we wish we could hunt moose, but where we are, they don't really give out any tags.
It's hard to get the tags here in Ontario with everything. So
but so we apply, but we
just hope.
We haven't
Fingers
been
crossed
blessed with a tag yet. We hunt deer and everything. We were lucky our first year here, actually. He got like a really big deer, and then ever since then the deer are here, but we haven't had enough snow for them to like really come in numbers. So we haven't got a deer since. We've gotten a couple roadkill deer that we've salvaged, but other than that, no, we haven't been lucky that way.
Yeah.
But thankfully we've been raising our own animals, and
small game hunting is really good around here too. Rabbits, grouse, stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned when you were down south there, it was shotgun season when you were hunting. And that's something interesting, because where I come from, I'm from a little further north than here. and it was always rifle hunting with deer. It was rifle hunting. I knew a couple of people that would do black powder, but it was almost all long rifle.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Southwestern Ontario, it's because there's a lot of it's a very farming community. So you don't have, like, up here we have more bush. It's, like there's more bush where
down there there's more fields.
Yeah, down south there's a lot of fields. So what happens is
it's easier hunting.
Yeah, you go down there. Like I always say, down south it's like bobbing for apples when you're hunting, because a lot of people, you push a bush, right? So you go from one side, you have a couple people blocking the bush, and then go to the other side, push through, and all the deer come out the other side, and you end up shooting a couple of them or whatever. But it's only I believe it's a 2-week season down there. 1 week you can do
2 different times.
Yeah, one in November and one in December. Whereas up here it's
longer.
Yeah, we do a lot of bow hunting up here and everything as well. So
yeah, it's more, we kind of had to like relearn how to hunt, really, because it's more hunting in like a sense, because you actually have to like see where the animals are going. You have to, get there ahead of them. You have to, track them and stuff like that. Whereas down there, it's like you basically just walk through the bush and they come out the other side kind of thing. But here, it's like there's so much bush, you would never be able to do that. So it's more like, it takes more skill for sure to like hunt up here than it does down there, I think. I mean, it all takes skill, but
yeah,
it's definitely more of a hunt than it is like a catching them.
Right. Yeah, I guess here you're going to be looking for rubs. You're going to be making sure where your wind is and making sure you're not, upwind from the animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be downwind, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's it's different. I mean, it's different wherever you go, no matter where if you're hunting different areas, different provinces, everything, it all really differs. But it's something that I've really enjoyed. And being up here, when we first moved up here, I got my trapping license. I was really fortunate, and I got to go to Gogama. Got my trapping license up there, and been trapping on our property here. And it's just something that I'm really falling in love with, and getting to use all different parts of the animals, and making, some of our own clothing and gloves and hats and stuff like that. It's really cool to see stuff like that, because it's something that's kind of like a dying art.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that makes me think, like, and all the things that you started doing there, it's pretty clear that you guys probably had to acquire a lot of skills if you didn't already have some of those. So like when you're dealing with, say, animal hides and stuff like that, what do you sort of do with that? What's the process?
Well, it's different kind of depending on, like, there's a lot of factors like time of year, animal, what you're going to do with it. Like if you're going to be using something for its furs, you obviously have to be really careful, like as soon as you're handling the animal, right? Because you don't want to damage the fur. You have to be careful how long you leave it from the time like you skin it and stuff like that, because the hair can start to slip. When it's cold like this, it's kind of nice because we live in a big freezer, right? So right. Everything is just like it works in your favor. Like the hair doesn't slip. Unless you're wanting the hair to slip, then I guess it's not working in your favor. But when you're dealing with furs and stuff, it's kind of nice being in the cold, because you can skin it and everything, flesh it and leave it, and it's preserved until it gets warm enough that it's if it's not dried, it's going to start to rot or whatever. So like we skin them and flesh them, and then we have like a whole bunch of freezers. We have like 5 freezers that are full of meat and different furs and stuff, and then we process them. We have some that are strung up outside that are just whenever I have the chance to get to them, and we have some barrels outside that are full of hides that we had donated to us, deer hides. You can be a little bit more lenient kind of with the deer hides if you're turning them into buckskin, because if the hair starts to slip, it's not a big deal because you're going to remove the hair anyways. So if it's, outside and it's in water or whatever, and the hair starts to slip, it's not a big deal.
Right.
But with furs and stuff, you obviously have to be a lot more careful. But yeah, it's It's more of like a full time like activity, the tanning and stuff of it, because the way we like to do it is I like to do it like naturally, and I like to work outside, and I don't even really have like a proper workspace inside to do it. And so I have to work with the sun and I have to work with the weather. So if it's raining out, obviously you're not going to be out there trying to soften it because you want it to be able to dry. If it's not if it's like later in the year and you don't have as much sun, you don't have as much time to be working on it in the daytime, and it's not going to dry, and you're going to be working it. Like one time I did one, it was like late in the fall, and I never ended up getting it to the point I wanted it to, because I just didn't have enough time in the day, and I was doing all the processes and all the steps, and I just didn't have enough daylight. So it ended up taking me so much longer because I didn't have as much sun to soften it. And you definitely have to like work with the seasons and the environment and stuff. It's very much like a natural thing like that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, you got to be really aware of like you said, the season and all that kind of stuff. I think that like thinking like that though, it might have like an effect sort of on your psyche a little bit. Like I wonder sometimes like how much it screws up people, say in the wintertime, like it's dark outside already. You got to think that, say, our ancestors would have been going to bed a little bit earlier because the sun would be down, right? And you would think you want to conserve energy, so you're going to sleep a little more in the wintertime. And then you think now in the wintertime, we'll stay up till 10 or 11 or whatever because we got light bulbs in the house and everything else. And I wonder how much that affects us. We fall totally out of sync with the seasons.
It's funny, like since we've moved here, I find myself, I'm really like, I'm very in tune with the sun. Like a lot of times, in the seasons, like I find when I come in from a day, like normally we stay outside pretty much until it's dark, right? Whether it's in the middle of the summer and it's 10 o'clock at night, or in the middle of the winter when it's 4:30. But when I come in the wintertime at 4:30, eat some dinner, relax a little bit, but I'm normally sleeping by 7-8 o'clock. Whereas in the summertime, I can stay up till 11 or 12 because the sun's out till, that time. So it makes it a lot easier. But I find, here doing everything that, working outside, working with your hands, always, you're always staying busy, that it's not hard to fall asleep at night.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's another thing too. Like we were talking with someone there recently, and it's like in our culture now, one thing that people will do all the time is like they'll get off work, then they'll go to a gym somewhere and work out, right? So that they can stay in shape. And you think about, say, doing something like what you're doing. If you're outside on your feet all day in the fresh air and you're lifting stuff, moving stuff, going through the bush, foraging, you don't need to go to a gym. And the proof is you come home, you eat your dinner, and you crash out right away.
Yeah, pretty much.
So are you getting enough sleep? Oh, probably, if you're going to bed that early, right? And I think that they say too, like your circadian rhythm gets messed up when you fall out of step with the sun. So, I mean,
Makes sense.
I think it probably is really good for you too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, we've definitely noticed, like, since we've moved up here, like that we definitely like roll with the seasons. Like everything that we do is definitely, we're more like in tune for sure with like the natural rhythms and everything of the planet, which is kind of nice because like you said, a lot of people have lost that. I think partly it could also have to do with like we don't live in a very like traditional home. Like we live in a log cabin and we heat only with wood. So like we have to get up in the middle of the night and put wood on. We feel the cold when it's cold. And, it's different than your usual house. Like today we didn't even have our stove going at all.
Yeah, I know, it was actually nice.
It's not that warm outside, but like when we're like climatized to it more, I think, because our house isn't at like 70 degrees like most people's houses would be, right? Like it's different. Like we're definitely, you get used to it, I guess. Like,
and you're probably dressing for the weather too, right? Like here,
we're not like
whatever inside the house, but you're like, gonna wear your sweaters and everything just to stay warmer.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting living, where we are, because it's, a lot of people I think would come here and, they see our place and, it's more of like, it's a cabin, right? Like it's very much, you have to, like Amy said, we have to wake up in the middle of the night, put wood on our stove. If we don't, we wake up in the morning and our kitchen is freezing, like freezing. So, it's a lot of work, but like, it's very rewarding. So that's that's really what we're going for. So.
Yeah, and I know like that sounds to me like it would be awesome too, because I like the idea of being outside working outside all day. Like it just sounds right, like because where I'm from there too, like I knew people who would live in log cabins, like and they still did black powder hunting and stuff like that. And it was I don't know, it's just I kind of always liked that. Like I grew up around lots of cabins and stuff, and I always really liked it. I always thought they were beautiful. I always thought it was just awesome to be kind of out just on a tree line near a field somewhere. It kind of brings like a painting to mind for me almost. And then I was just thinking too, how we were talking about sort of living in line with nature too. It made me think of like the pigs you guys got, because they're like these woolly looking pigs, and I think what a perfect pig for northeast. I keep saying northwestern Ontario, northeastern Ontario. Yeah, I'm from northwestern Ontario. That's why I always screw that up.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, they look like the perfect animal. So like, what got you onto those guys instead of say another kind of pig?
Well, so I when I was a kid, I raised like my first pig when I was like 4 years old, and was like obsessed with pigs, and like made my dad get this pig for me from this other farmer, and like raised pigs, but they were just like your regular pink pigs and everything. And so we kind of were thinking about getting pigs again. And then he was kind of looking at Mangalitsas, but I was like, I don't know, like there's not very common, and it's kind of like a pricey pig, just for a pig. And then his sister-in-law was saying, well, you guys should get pigs, and she's Romanian, and the pigs kind of originate from like Romania, Hungary, European countries, and they actually used to raise them there, and they were like, oh, if you guys get them, like we'll support you, like we'll buy pork from you. So we were like, okay, well I guess like it was more tempting to know that like we'd have a market and everything for it. So then we just kind of jumped into it. Somebody was selling they were Berkshire Mangalitsa crosses, so we were like, oh, it's not too big of an investment, it's just a cross, it's a good introduction into the breed. And so we just kind of went for it. And it was actually when like the pandemic first, like
it was right
in 2020, like the beginning of the year. We didn't even have anything ready or anything. We just kind of like signed up for getting pigs, and then we just kind of went on the fly, right? Like we do with most stuff. We just kind of, you're never ready until you're ready. Really. And like got it all set up, and then we had pigs, and then we were like, okay, well now we got them, now let's get the purebreds, right? We're gonna get a purebred boar to breed them, and then now we need a purebred female. And then we just kind of fell in love with the breed, and started to learn more about them, and just have become really passionate about them. They're not so they're Mangalitsa pigs, and they're not very common in Canada. They're starting to become more common. They were imported into the US like in the 2000s. They actually almost went extinct in Europe, and then they imported a bunch to the US, and they were working on building the populations, and then they imported some into Canada. And now there's probably maybe like 20 farms in Canada that have these pigs. And so we enjoy like educating people on the breed, and like spreading awareness about them and helping to build the population back up. I'm a board member for the MBOR Mangalitsa board organization and registry. So in my position, I help with like registrations and help with education, and helping get other people on board with registering their pigs, because it's really important to register them, because there isn't a lot of bloodlines. So by doing this, we're helping to track pigs that we know are here and that we know are pure, to help save the genetic diversity. And also it helps with other people who want to breed, because there isn't a lot of diversity, that that you're not breeding like pigs that are too closely related, that's going to end up hurting the genetics long term, because they are a little bit more susceptible to having defects when being inbred, because the genetic pool is not very big to begin with, because they almost went extinct. So it's just something we're super passionate about, and they're hard not to love them. They're kind of like big dogs, like of any kind of like pig breed. They're very friendly, like compared to most pigs. They kind of are just like big dogs, and they look like sheep, and they're very cold hardy. And that was kind of like a big thing for us, was like they're super cold hardy. They do good like on pasture.
It's like a perfect match for Northern Ontario. Really.
And they are also they're a lard breed pig, so they have a lot more fat than like your typical pig, but it gives like a lot of flavor, and the fat that they have is actually it's healthy for you. It's like the equivalent of like olive oil. You can use it in cooking, and so it adds a lot of flavor. You can render the lard, you can use it in cooking. And I also like to use it for making soap, and I'm going to actually experiment with making lotions and like creams with it. So that was kind of another thing that was like attractive to us about it, was all these different uses for the pig. Because I do like making like herbal products and stuff like that for apothecary. So we just took like our one pig into the butcher, and we got like over 50 pounds of fat back. So I'm gonna make like so much soap. I'm so excited. And just like all those different things combined is really like what turned us on to them, I guess. Like, and I just they are like totally different than like your normal pig.
They're like big teddy bears. They really are. Like
Well, and that makes a lot of sense too, especially living in a climate like we do. You want a fat, hardy pig, especially with all those uses that you talked about. Like if you can get your soap off of it, you can render the lard, you can use it for your cooking. And when you're up here in the north, because our growing season is so compact, you have to preserve what you can, and then you're probably going to eat heavier on the meat and the fat in the wintertime. It's just what it is what it is. Yeah. So, and I noticed you guys do a lot of preserving, and you guys do something I don't see very often, and you can your meat. So how do you go about doing that? Like what's the trick to that, or is there any trick?
So my good friend Kayla is the one that got us onto that. She's like a diehard like off-gridder homesteader, and she introduced me into pressure canning. I never really even knew what pressure canning was. It's more of like an American thing to pressure can. But so you have to pressure can meat. You can't water bath it. It's not safe. Some people think you can. It's not safe. It's not like very reliable. So you have to pressure can it. Same with any kind of like low acidity foods like potatoes, squash, corn, carrots. If they're not like pickled, anything that's not pickled like that, it has to be pressure canned. And it's pretty easy. Like you just kind of process the meat, get rid of the fat, the bones and stuff like that, and we raw pack it, and you load it into the pressure canner and put it on for like an hour and a half, and that's all you do really. It's super easy. Put a little bit of salt in. Like it seems weird, like at first, the first time I ever pressure can meat, I was honestly terrified. Well, I was just scared of the pressure canner, because like you hear horror stories and stuff, like in those Instapots and stuff, they're all kind of like the same idea, right? So I was like super scared, and every now and then I have moments where it starts doing like a seal starts to go on it, and I have to call my friend and be like, does this sound like it's gonna explode? Because I'm scared it's gonna blow up. I'm always so paranoid. I always have to make sure I have nothing else going on, and I'm only watching the pressure canner. But like it's so rewarding afterwards, and like the meat is just so good. It like falls apart in your mouth. Like it's really good to do like chicken, like if you have like a bunch of roosters and stuff, and it's like that really tough meat, it's really good to pressure can it, because it will make it so tender and so good. And it's just nice too, because it doesn't take up space in your freezer, and you don't have to worry about like ever losing the power and losing all the meat. And it's like fast food, right? Like whenever I don't feel like cooking, like I can just grab a jar and just like dump it in a pan and heat it up with something
Homestead
else.
fast food.
And it's ready to go, and it's nice for that. For sure. And we can a lot of our food, meat and potatoes, and like pretty much.
everything,
Well,
everything.
we try
All-
and survive off of just like the stuff that we grow ourselves. We freeze some stuff, but most of it like gets canned really. And then like some stuff goes into like a cold storage, which is really just our bedroom.
Our bedroom.
That is cold. Like cold storage. We want to build a root cellar, but it's hard where we are because we're so close to like the water table and it is all rock. So we're thinking maybe if we do it in like the side of a hill or something, but it's hard. We got to figure something out though, because it's getting to be a lot, like having food everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's something we were talking about recently there too, because we're getting everything kind of figured out for what we're going to be planting there right away. Because we got the dome there and we're going to be trying to put stuff in there early. I want to see if I can get maybe 2 harvests of tomatoes. And so thinking about that, we've been thinking about the preserving we're going to have to do too. And we've been talking about doing a cold room too.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's the thing. You start thinking about, oh, I got to preserve all this food. And then you think like how you're used to having a pantry, right? Where you got like a week's worth of food in there. And you're like, that's not going to cut it. I need like shelves and shelves and shelves to put all my food on.
You need a bedroom for it.
Yeah. Yeah. What was a 3-bedroom house? They said it's like, well, 2 bedrooms and a storage room.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's when you like we try to, I mean, how like I would say we really only go to the grocery store probably once every 2 to 3 months. So it's, you know, we're really fortunate in the sense that, you know, we go to the grocery store to pick up, you know, some flour and stuff like
Butter and
that,
cheese.
butter, but
Milk. We don't
you
have
know,
a cow or anything yet. That'll be
you know,
next.
yeah,
is
like
something
our-
that produces milk so we can make like cheese and
Cheese.
stuff, because that's like the one thing that we buy a lot of is
Yeah,
like cheese,
cheese
butter,
and-
milk, flour, sugar.
yeah.
But you can kind of stock up on those things too, which is nice.
Yeah,
like-
it's buying them in bulk and stuff, and then you don't have to, you know, we don't have to go into town to
quite as often.
yeah.
Do you know if there's anyone in town or around here that does a dairy or has a dairy? Because that's one thing we were talking about too. Because one thing that we commonly buy when we go to the store, like a lot of stuff we try not to buy from the store, like we'll still get our fruit and veggies from there for now. But like all of our meat, we try to get from local sources or whatever. But dairy, I couldn't figure. I know there's a place in town that sells cheese, but I don't know where they get their dairy from.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not we
Well,
don't
because I don't think you're allowed, right? Like farmers aren't allowed to just sell their milk.
Oh, okay. Like it's probably got to be pasteurized because of our laws here. I don't think you're allowed to have raw milk, eh?
There's trying, I think. I know in the States, somewhere in the States, they fought for it for farmers to be able to sell like their milk right from their farm. And somewhere in like the east northern USA area, I think they passed it. And then I think in Canada, I seen something about they were like farmers were trying to fight for like the right to be able to sell their milk kind of thing with like, it's just like you basically say like, you know, you accept the risk that it's not safe or whatever,
and I mean,
right?
I would think if you went is there any dairy farms that are around here? That
I would
like,
think small scale.
if you went, yeah, I'm not sure of any actual dairy farms, but like in southwestern Ontario when I lived there, I mean, if you went to a farmer and asked them, most of them, you know, are like they're pretty, you know, farmers generally are pretty giving people, you know what I mean? They're pretty nice people. Like if you approach them and you know they know that you're not out to get them, there's more than likely more than happy to
build a relationship with them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the nice thing about getting your food local too. There is that kind of relationship, right? And like say in the case with say unpasteurized milk, it's like, well, it's not safe, but it's like, well, I'm an adult and I looked into it and I tried it and I'm not dead, so I'm going to keep drinking it. Is that okay? Is that okay if an adult makes decisions for themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You'd think,
you'd think that sometimes the stuff that goes on nowadays seems it's just you have to shake your head at it.
Well, it's treating people like kids all the time, but anyways, that's for another time. Another thing you guys do too is you guys do seeds. So what kind of seeds do you guys hang on to or cultivate?
I kind of just like experiment, really. Like I save a lot of like different vegetable seeds that I know we're gonna grow and that I know aren't gonna cross pollinate. And like for ourselves, mostly I saved a lot of veggies. I sold some veggie seeds this year, but I didn't have like enough quantity to be able to like keep some for ourselves and share some.
Right.
And then like a lot of herbs and stuff. I'm like, as I'm getting like more, like growing more plants and learning about more plants and spending more time with them and everything, you know, you have to kind of get to know them in all the seasons too. And like a part of that would be getting to know like how they produce seed and what their seed is like. So as like the years go by, I'm always kind of like experimenting with different ones and gathering seed from them, and whatever extra I have, I kind of sell or share or trade with other people. So I don't really target any specific things. It's more just like, oh, I have a lot of this that's going to seed. So I guess I'll share it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like herbs a lot, because I like herbs and we have a lot of herbs, and I think
keep everything really, like
Yeah.
it seems, you know, everything has a use at some point or another. So, you know, why
Yeah,
not
they don't
keep
really
the
go
seed?
bad.
Yeah, keep the seeds, and if you use them, you use them. If you don't, you know, you can share them and pass them out to other people in the community as well. So
Yeah.
I just want everyone to have medicine everywhere. And I want, that's what I want to. I go around with my extras too, and I just throw them around. I'm like, you might survive, you might not. And just like hoping that everything is gonna like I don't put real effort into some of them, but like some of them I just kind of, you know, like toss them around. And my hopes is just that like in a couple years, there's gonna be like medicine growing all over the place that I can like step out my door and be like, oh, this is here, this is there. Instead of being more of like a monoculture type feel where it's just like rows and rows and stuff. It's just more naturalized, you know.
Yeah.
And where did you learn those skills?
I'm really honestly like pretty self-taught.
Okay.
And other people, like other mentors and stuff like that. I grew up, there was like a woman down the road from me who I spent a lot of time with her daughter and at her house, who was like had a very like intense knowledge of like plants, and she actually like helped cure her husband's cancer with plants and stuff. And I was just so fascinated by that, and I think that's what really sparked it for me, was like, wow, like a plant can do that. Like they say that that doesn't work, like why aren't doctors doing that, right? And I think that for me was like, that's cool, I want to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it is sort of a lost art. Like, I mean, there used to be people used to have all kinds of backyard remedies. Like Sophia's family is from Portugal, and they lived on a farm. And there was lots of times where, you know, the hospital was like probably a half-hour drive away, and no one had any cars. So, you know, you went out in the backyard and you grabbed something, and there was usually women in the town. They knew like, oh yeah, you go pick one of these, you go pick one of these or whatever, and we'll fix you up. You know, you got a toothache, grab one of those. You got this, grab one of those, you know. And it's like, we used, I mean, most of human history, I think that was probably what you had for medicine. It's really only in the last 100 years we've gotten so far removed from most of human history. And I mean, I think to some degree, when you see a lot of people going back to this kind of thing, I think it's almost like it's like we're realizing that we've made a very serious change, and we aren't what we once were. And I think there's almost part of us that realizes that there's part of the past that we've left behind that we actually need to revivify and bring into the future with us. It's like, I think sometimes we get a little too kind of like cocky as modern people. We think, well, because we're right here in this period of time, obviously we're the best people because we're here, and all those people that came before us, well, what do they know? And so, you know, we don't need bush medicine anymore. But it's like, well, there is real use to it, and you can have all kinds of medicine right in your yard.
Yeah. Well, I think more and more people are starting to realize that we need more of that, and less of big pharma, and, you know, not like I always like first world problems and first world conveniences, right? Where everything you can just, you know, go to the grocery store 4 times a week if you want to. And, you know, like just having such a wasteful society where everybody, you know, everything like fast fashion, and, you know, everything's so disposable nowadays. Whereas, you know, before, it seems like, and now everybody is moving back into that, where, you know, people want to be more in tune with nature and know exactly where their food is being grown, and where, you know, how much love is being put into the food that's being processed for them, and the meat that's being raised for them. And if the more that you can do it yourself, the better off it really is for you yourself, for the community that you live in, for everybody around you, really, at the end of the day, if you look in the big picture. So
I think another thing too with plant medicine is like it's very accessible for people, right? Like not everyone is able to, like get to a city and, buy these things and stuff like that to better their health or whatever. They don't have the money or whatever it might be, right? Where if you have the knowledge, like you can go out and you can plant a seed and you can have those foods or those medicines, or you can go out and you can forage and you can work with these plants and use them to help heal you. And it doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you your time. It costs you your energy to go out and, make an exchange with the plant, to work with the plant, to tend the plants. But it's not like materialistic, and it's not it's just very like accessible to people. And I think that's kind of important, and maybe why too it's becoming more attractive to people, because people are stuck at home and they can't do things. So
well, and I was just thinking too there, like since you guys started like going forward with a more self-reliant life, did you notice that maybe you gained a lot of confidence? Because I have to imagine like it's really scary, especially you start to go live out in a cabin and you're going to be kind of cut off from people. I know for me, at first, at least, I'd be a little bit worried. But now that you guys have been doing it a little while, like you must feel like, hey, I'm out here, I'm in nature, I am doing it, like I can do it.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, like go ahead.
Well, like some instances of things, like it puts some things into perspective of like, I know when we first moved out here, we were like, I was in the bush by myself. I didn't tell anybody where I went or anything like that. And I like slipped a little bit and I almost fell and like really hurt myself. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't tell anybody where I went. Like I don't have anything with me. Like, what if I would have fallen, right? Like, and it just kind of is like a reality check of like, okay, you have to be careful about what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. You leave a note, tell people where you're going. And it's definitely put more of a confidence, and I guess just like a knowledge and a respect for nature,
Being aware
and aware, yeah, of things differently that like you wouldn't normally have, right? Where like you don't normally think about those things. Or like,
and we were really fortunate too, because we kind of got here and we had a year, or what was it, 2 years, a year and a half really, to get everything set up and kind of start planning on what we wanted to do. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So for me, I was working like I'm still working down south in the summer times, in the last, since COVID and everything, because of all the restrictions. I have been limited on how much I can actually work because we've been closed. So a lot of time that, I get to be up here, it's just, it makes we're really focusing on exactly what we want to do here. And it's kind of been nice and a blessing almost, in the sense that, COVID and everything is going on, but here we don't really notice it because we're kind of in like our own little bubble here almost.
Yeah, like when the pandemic first hit, like we weren't fully like growing all our own food and everything, but we had like a pretty big storage like of canned stuff and everything like that. But we were kind of like, savoring them a bit. I'd always say like, no, don't eat that. We only got so many left. What if something happens? Like, what if something happens, right? And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, yes, we're good, right? Like everyone's like, oh my God, panic buying toilet paper and this and that. And I was like, we got a stockpile, like we're good. And then like, it just made us, that year I was like, we're never going to the grocery store again. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I'll eat weeds. I don't care. And like, I was like, I'm going to grow a bigger garden. And then I like doubled the garden the next year and like preserved even more now, like to the point where we're just like, we have so much and it's great. Like, I'm grateful for it. And it's been nice. Like it's given us the confidence and everything to know that like we're okay, like
we can do it.
Like he said, it feels like we're in our own world kind of. Sometimes we're like, sometimes I even forget actually when I go to the store to bring a mask, because I'm like, oh, I forgot that we have to do that. Because we just like never go anywhere or really do anything. So it's like we're just in our own world, I don't know, it's nice in that aspect for sure.
Well, that's like really cool though too. It's it's cool to have like a situation where you're put to a challenge and a lot of people fall apart, and you guys saw the challenge and sort of rose to it, and in fact got stronger and challenged yourself to do more work. So, you know, there was a little bit extra pressure put on you and you said, oh, I can do this. And I mean, maybe you didn't have a choice either, but you went out and you did it anyways. But it's
Yeah.
like, I think in some ways, like, I mean, if you want to say a silver lining to a cloud in a sense, I think there's a lot of people that are being made stronger right now. I think a lot of people are realizing sort of we were almost living in a dream sort of reality where there was almost no consequence. You know, it was like I think especially when it comes to like the idea of like dying or whatever, I don't think people really considered that ever, because we live in a very, very comfortable society where
Be safe.
a lot of our diseases are even from affluence, right? It's because people eat too much and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think now that we've had a brush up against death, let's say, we've kind of realized that life is a fragile thing, and it's like when you were saying when you were walking in the woods there and you fell, you're like, I could have died here. So it's like you gotta really pay attention and savor every moment. And then another thing I hear you guys saying after that is you're talking about being challenged and sort of being afraid, but then you keep saying, well, we're so grateful and we were so lucky, and that focusing on that, I think, is like a really endearing thing to see, and I love hearing that, because it's like I see like for resilience and strength. I mean, you guys are a great example of that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. Like I always say, like, this isn't the lifestyle for everybody, right? And I know when we kind of first said that we were moving up here, a lot of people in our lives were like, you know, like, are you sure that's what you want to do? Like, or you're crazy, like you live up in the bush, like.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's very, very rewarding. And, you know, I wake up in the morning, and when I go to bed at night, I'm very fulfilled that, you know, I feel like we've done something good. And it's nice to, I don't know, not leave a huge mark, try to influence people in a positive way, especially with the way the world is right now. It's so crazy and everything. So and we're really fortunate up here because it's such like it's a really good community. Like, it's a small community, but it's a very good community in the sense that everybody tries to help everybody else out and support everybody. So it's kind of like, it's really nice in that sense.
Yeah. Well, when we first kind of came up here too, with like the whole kind of mindset of like, we don't like society, like we don't want to be part of it, we're just gonna be in the bush by ourselves, like, you know what I mean? And then like we've kind of met other like-minded people and kind of built like this community, and now we're kind of more in like the mind state of like, instead of getting mad at like the world for being the way it is and like fretting over it, we're just kind of like leading by example, right? Like we'll just do what we think is the right way to do things, you know what I mean? Like what our beliefs are, and like for the environment and farming and growing your own food and being self-sufficient, and maybe people will be inspired by it and maybe they'll want to do it too, and whatever kind of steps that may be for them. But that's just our hopes, that maybe instead of like being like, you need to do this, like people just say, hey, that's cool that they're doing that, and want to do it too.
Well, and saying that too makes me think like and maybe it's a cliche quote, but it's like, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. And when you think about that too, you think like, okay, you can go and fight with somebody and try to tell them that they're wrong and they got to do this or whatever. Or you go out, you start doing it, and then they see what you're doing and they say, what the heck are you doing? And you tell them, oh, I'm doing this and doing that. And they're like, huh. And then maybe they want to go and learn and do it because now they've seen you doing this thing, right? And it's like sometimes the best way to counteract the forces that seem to be against you is to go the other way. It's almost like use the energy, redirect it, and take it where you want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, it seems to be working. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. So like with the apothecary there, what kind of stuff do you do with that? Like, is it like tinctures and stuff? And then I guess it's like would it be something that you're sort of taking almost like a vitamin, like a supplement kind of thing? Or do you have a lot of stuff that's sort of like acute use or?
So I make all kinds of stuff really. So I grow all the plant medicines ourselves, or I forage like respectfully for some of it, and also like tend the wild plants too. So I don't source anything elsewhere. So I'm really proud of that, like knowing when people buy our stuff, like it was grown here from a seed. It's, it's not mass produced by somebody else and I just bought it from them and made it into something, because it's going to have all my energy into it, all the love and everything that I put into it is going to be in it, and it's going to be a better, like more potent product than somebody who's like mass farming it. And we make like soaps and lotions and tinctures and
salves and lip balms.
Yeah, all kinds of like different kind of everyday products, and some that are more like health type products. Some of the tinctures and stuff like that are more of like a lot of plant medicine isn't really like, oh, you take this and it's going to cure it, right? Whereas that's kind of like Western medicine, I guess, is more like treating the symptoms. Whereas like plant medicine is more kind of like a preventative, and it's kind of helping in that sense of like you take something and it's going to ease the symptoms because it's helping your body work the way it's supposed to, rather than like this is the problem and it's like attacking the problem. So it's kind of, I guess, in a sense, like a vitamin, like something that you take daily that's going to help your overall health. And then some of the lotions and stuff like that are kind of for pain and stuff that have like a more instant kind of thing, that are actually very similar to some like chemical type things. We have like aspirin and stuff, like poplar bud has the same components that aspirin does, same with like white willow bark. So it's kind of cool that way too. How
it's even like the toothache crest.
That
I've been dealing with a bad tooth for a while, and I had to go on antibiotics for it, but I was using Oragel, and then Amy's like, well, here, I'm going to make this for you, and she made me like this tincture where I just take a drop and put it on my tooth, and
it like numbs
it works better than what I'm buying from the doctors.
And it's like wanting 2 ingredients, I guess, as a tincture.
Yeah, and it's
which is kind of nice, like knowing these things that you're putting in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and how powerful it can be. Like there's some things, like Amy said, there's some things that are meant to be, just like a vitamin where you take it, to prevent things, or to just overall better your health. But at the same time, there is things that are like that, instant relief, like especially for the toothache stuff, like that's
well, and there's a lot of like drugs and stuff where they've basically like studied plants and basically copied the plant and made it into like another form that they can patent, right? Like that's kind of what a lot of different things are. Like plants came first before pills and stuff did, right? Like, so a lot of this stuff, it's they studied it and they just made
it's copied really from Mother Nature.
Copying nature, really.
Yeah, like they'll synthesize it so that way they can patent it, right? Because I think, I'm not totally sure, but I think there's a lot of medicine that they pull out of the Amazon. Like they pull plants out of there and they'll make a derivative or a synthetic version of it. And it's like you said, they study it and that's what they're going to make. And I mean, not totally related, but that idea of like the plant medicine, it makes me think of this story I heard about, I think it's ayahuasca. And the idea was that they were trying to figure out how to make this brew, the shaman were. And the idea was they got basically exposed to this plant in the right mixture with another plant. And while they were having their experience with the plants, they said the plant teachers told them where to go to find the other plants. And then you look at the recipe that they've got made, and it's this very sophisticated recipe of like just this much of this and this much of this, and you got to boil it for 24 hours and all this. And you ask the shaman, you say, well, where did this come from? He said, the plants taught us. And you're like, what do you mean the plants taught? But then then you look at the work, right? And the work is, well, I mean, it works. So then you kind of think, well, where did that come from? Did it come from the plants, or is this guy telling me a tale, or what is it? But that's one thing that like I think we've lost too, is like this idea that like we think nature is almost like dead around us. Like it's a real material view where it's like we live in a dead world. And then you look at like a lot of our ancestors and tribes and stuff like that, and they talk about everything being alive. And it's funny how cynical we are, because we think of that as being a childish or sort of naive way of looking at the world. And something that I've thought about recently is like, well, what do you think has more meaning, a dead world or a living world? You know, is everything with spirit? Does everything have life energy in it? Or is everything dead? And, you know, you think, are you eating living things and then bolstering your life? Or are you eating dead things and, you know, becoming dead?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I like, I think about it a lot, and it's sort of almost like this moving back to the land too. It sort of feels pseudo spiritual in a way too. Like maybe that's what we lost in our modern times is we sort of, arrogantly thought we could replace sort of spirit in a way. We thought we didn't need it. And I think maybe when people are going back to the land now, it's that calling back to spirit, or spirit calling us back to the land, or however you want to look at it. But I can't help but feel that it's like so cynical to think that that's a naive or childish way to look at the world, when I see like just so much potential meaning. And especially when you live in a world where sometimes it's hard to, you know, justify life in a sense, because people will do awful things, and you think like, you know, why the hell does that happen? But I don't know, there's something about having a life with meaning and trying to be in touch with spirit that somehow it doesn't justify the bad things in the world, but it's like it makes it endurable, maybe. Like it's like, this will pass, I can get through it. I don't know.
And like what you said about like plants and stuff, like being alive, like I feel like the food in like the grocery store, like it doesn't feel like it has like a life or a spirit. Like the fruit, like the fruit is picked and vegetables are picked before they're even ready, so they're not at like their, you know, prime time that's going to give you like the benefits and stuff. They're covered in wax and chemicals and stuff. Like they don't even seem like real food, like when you go there sometimes. And like the meat is just like mass produced and like didn't have the greatest life. And like that's what you're going to put like exchange with your body. Like you want to exchange it with something that was like not, you know, had the like the greatest life, or something that was picked before it was even ready and then like sprayed with chemicals. Like I think when you're growing it yourself, like people say all the time, well, how do you eat those pigs? They're so cute. Or like, you know, how do you eat your pets? And it's hard. Like it's not hard. Like it's sad. It sucks. It's horrible.
Death is not fun in
it's
any
horrible
sense.
But it like that connection and knowing that like, you know, you loved them and you gave them a great life is like a good exchange. I think like I'd rather know that like the thing I'm eating was full of love than knowing it never went outside, nobody ever told it that they loved it, nobody ever pet it or anything like that, you know.
When we dropped we just took our one pig into the butcher, and we opened up the trailer and it had just freshly snowed, and the gentleman that was helping us with taking her out of the trailer, she was kind of standing at the door looking out the door of the trailer, and he's like, oh, is she afraid of snow? Because there was fresh snow, he was gonna like shovel all the snow. And we kind of like looked at him like, what do you mean? Is she afraid of the snow?
We came from 2 hours north of you.
And then we started thinking about it, and we were like, no, she's afraid of the barn because she's never seen a barn before. She's never been inside of a barn. Like she lived out in the bush and, you know, foraged on like an open pasture and basically lived like an outdoor wild pig, essentially. Just got to get belly rubs and got fed every day.
Yeah. Well, and that's even too, like as a hunter, you know, like if when you're trying to harvest an animal, you want that clean shot that puts the animal down right away, because it helps the animal die quickly without, you know, any undue suffering. But on top of that, if the animal stresses out and runs and all of that cortisol gets in their muscles and it ruins the meat. It makes it really tough. And you got to think, well, that's an anxious animal, right? Because they're trying to get away, they're trying to survive. And you think like a big feedlot with all these cows that are jammed in there. And you think about a life with like one of your pigs, where you're saying, you know, the pig gets love and belly rubs and stuff. And then you have a cow that lives in this place where just I don't know, it sounds like an anxiety provoking place to be. And I wonder, like, we have a society that has anxiety issues. It's like maybe we're eating way too much anxious food. Like all of our food is anxious and we eat that. And it's like, you are what you eat. Sounds kind of silly, but it's not totally wrong.
No.
Well, they say food is medicine, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problems that we see nowadays, it really truly, I think, comes from our food. Like, and that's one big change in the last like 20, 30, 40 years, that has changed in our society is like food. We've mass produced it now, and we're using so many, like, we've streamlined how to do it. We do it as quick as we can. We do it as fast as we can with all these chemicals, like get rid of all the weeds, get rid of all the bugs. Like, we figured out just the best possible way to do it. But in the end, it's not really the best possible way, because the food, it's not, like I said, it's not even real food anymore.
Yeah.
It's a product. It's not medicine anymore. It's
well, and even the way the methods we use to overproduce that food, you look at that and we're producing way more food than we actually eat, at least here in North America, and we're throwing a ton of it out. And the methods that we're using to maximize the yield are degrading the soil. Yeah. And we don't have any fertilizer now to put into the soil. So it's like, well, we got a lot of food out of it in the short term, but if 2-3 generations from now, the people who are going to be living here have nothing, they're not really going to think too kindly of us for what we did, and because we left them dead, dying soil.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's something I think we have to kind of look at, and I think that's why, like, when we kind of started looking into smaller scale farming and self-reliance and that kind of thing, that was something that appealed to us, because the emphasis was on making sure that you kind of left the ground in a better condition than when you found it, really. Yeah. Because if you're doing it right, you're actually adding nutrients to the ground all the time. And not only are you taking care of and keeping plants alive, but also all of the microbiology that's living in the soil and the worms. And in some cases, if you're growing enough stuff, you have birds come in and they're going to pick berries off little places and they're going to do their thing. And then maybe there's something comes in that eats that too. And so you're creating this little ecosystem that's got all different kinds of life going on there. And it's just like a life cycle that grows more life. And then you have another cycle where it's like you put your foot on the gas and there's nothing but a husk left at the end.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's a lot, like the reward is there. And I think it's
more of like a personal reward, I think. And well, for the future too, right? It's not like a quick, you're going to get rich, and like, it's not like it's not
easy, but as a whole, I think if more people were to do that and be,
it'll
be
pay
more
off
self-sufficient,
in the future,
exactly.
And for yourself, and
as a whole, for the just mankind, in general, if everybody was more, grew their own food and did all that, society itself would be, you'd be a lot closer as communities, small towns, even in cities. If we had more areas, and now it seems like it's trending that even in cities you have common areas where you can grow plants, and on top of the skyscrapers you have like little gardens and stuff that you can put up there, and have little community things, even if it's in like your little building, having a little garden that everybody can come and tend to. And because it's all rewarding, just even running your fingers through the dirt, like being like a kid again, right? Forgetting all the hustle bustle of the world, and not chasing the almighty dollar, and just slowing down and really being present of where you are and what's around you, and really the blessing that it is, because time flies. It doesn't stop for anybody. So enjoy it while you're here, and really try to make the best and most
positive
impact on the environment and the area that
it's
you are.
It's not just about your generation.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's
I feel like a lot of like monoculture type farming is just like, they're not thinking really about the future, right? They're just thinking about, I have this quota and everything or whatever that I have to meet, and that's what we're doing. It's
food is a byproduct of money, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like you're more interested, like seems like society's more interested in getting the money rather than the nutritious side of food and everything.
Yeah, like I said about the
Yeah.
no, like you're not gonna get rich like being a permaculture farmer, like a no-till farmer. You're gonna get, it's gonna be rewarding and stuff, and it's gonna be good. Like you're helping your community, you're helping yourself, but it's not like you're some big farmer with like thousands of acres no-till and you're just making it big time, you know.
Yeah.
But it's rewarding in different ways that I think are more important than money, for sure.
Well, it makes me think too, like there's that saying too, you know, you can't take money with you when you go, but if you go and you have a life well lived, you know, maybe you take that with you when you go. Maybe there's something to that, right? Having that kind of an experience. And I think also too, the idea that, you know, it's all about money or whatever, it's I don't know. I think there's a reason why people have what they call a midlife crisis. I think they get to 40 years old, they look at all the money they made, the big house and the nice car, and they say, why do I still feel empty inside?
Yeah.
Well, you've been filling up that box you live in and not filling up your heart. And maybe you ought to fill up your heart.
Yeah.
And it makes me think too, like maybe part of the reason our farming is so focused on money is, I mean, if you look at the history of farming and say where you used to have like a landlord who would own the land, and he would have serfs and they'd work the land and he would take the surplus of it and sell it. And so there you kind of have your first sort of big scale agriculture where someone's trying to turn a buck off of it. And I mean, at least since the 30s or 40s, it seems here in the North America, we've been sort of moving more towards, for some reason, bigger and bigger farms. And it's like more money for someone, I guess. But I mean, a lot of these farmers are getting squeezed out, that they can't make any money. And I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem sustainable. It seems like it'd be just a better idea for people to kind of, maybe the problem is like people have to get involved with the work themselves, and it's easier to kind of just go to the grocery store than it is to go out in the field.
Convenience.
The convenience side of things I mean, and even when I know when we first moved here, it was difficult in the sense that, you know, like if we want to go to a grocery store, we have to drive 20 minutes down the road. It's not like we can just, you know, jump in the car and be at the store in 5 minutes. And on top of that, a lot of it, like when we first kind of came here, like Amy said, we were kind of like, we wanted to come here because we didn't want to be around people, and we didn't want to be, you know, we were kind of tired of what was going on and everything. And we kind of just wanted to move out to the bush and enjoy each other's company and what we wanted to start and where our plan was to grow. And it's just I forget where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, maybe that's a good note to start wrapping it up then. So how about you guys tell anybody who listens to this where they could get a hold of you guys, where they could get your products, that kind of stuff.
So you can get a hold of us on Facebook or Instagram. On Instagram, it's at Restless Ravens. Facebook, I think if you just look up Restless Ravens Homestead, will come up. And our website is restlessravens.ca. And we offer our products on our website. We also have a sign up for our herbal CSA, which is like a subscription box where we do 4 boxes a year. And we also will share updates on our social media about stuff like that. We also do workshops, foraging type workshops and stuff like that we also advertise on there. It's never really too far in advance advertised because our lives are chaotic and we can't really plan things too far ahead because there's always something that happens. So it's usually like within a week, maybe notice like events and stuff like that. But we try our best, and you can usually find updates on any of our social medias about that. So yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. Well,
guys.
thanks so much,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
It was nice talking to you.